I swear the creepiest stuff always happens in hospitals. So Katrina was a nurse in the pediatric oncology part of the hospital, and she was looking after this one little boy that was in rough shape. It seemed like his treatments weren't working anymore, but despite all this, he stayed in pretty good spirits. And he would always wear his Spider-Man costume. Like every day, always in the Spider-Man costume. Sadly, the little boy eventually passed away from his cancer. But then, a few months later, a teen boy gets admitted down the hall. And this was after the little boy had already passed away, so there was no overlap between the two. This boy was also in pretty rough shape and his treatments weren't working anymore. But then one night, a nurse hears him talking to someone inside of his room, but there's no one there. So the nurse goes in to see who he's talking to, and she can't believe what he says. The teen said he just saw a little boy dressed as Spider-Man in his room talking to him. And this little boy was telling him all about Marvel and all about how much he loves Spider-Man. The teen boy ended up passing away a few weeks later, but that story always stuck with the nurses.
Tell me, what's the creepiest experience you ever had in your life and why you still think about them?
So I was working ICU at my old hospital in Alabama. And I had a patient who was actively dying, and she was comfort care only, meaning that we had all accepted that she was dying, her family had accepted it, and we were just keeping her comfortable. So I would go in every hour and check on her, and sometimes she wanted to talk. So I go in, and it's 11 or 12 at night, and she says, "Who's that little boy that keeps coming to my door?" And I said, "I don't know. What does he look like?" And she said, "He's about 2 or 3 years old. He's wearing a little red suit. He just comes to the door and stares at me." And I said, "I'm not sure. This is an adult ICU, so there shouldn't be children in here." And I said there shouldn't be children, but I knew. There was one. There was a little boy who would come and visit the patients, and the patients would see him, and then they would pass away within 24 hours. And I knew that was who she was seeing. So I just kept her company, kept coming in. And a couple hours later, I come in and she wanted to hold my hand. So we're holding hands and she's talking and she looks at me and she says, "Honey, when I'm gone, make sure you take care of Bruce." And I got chills all over my body because Bruce is my dad's name. And I said, "Who is Bruce?" And she said, "You know who he is. You look just like him." And I do. I look exactly like my dad. And I said, "What do I need to take care of? What do I need to do?" And she said, "You just watch over him, make sure he doesn't fall." And I said, "Yes, ma'am." And she drifted off to sleep, and I walked out, and a couple hours later, her daughter came in to visit. And I asked her daughter, "Do you know anybody named Bruce? Your mom was talking about a Bruce last night." And the daughter said, "No, I don't know anybody named Bruce." And I said, "You don't have any siblings or cousins or anything?" And she said, "No." She said, "I'm an only child as far as I know. It was my mother's only pregnancy, so I don't think it would even be maybe a child that she lost." She said, "We don't know anyone named Bruce." So I went home and I thought about that all day. And when I came back in that night, my patient had passed away.
This is a terrifying but true hospital ghost story. A woman in her 20s was admitted to hospital with serious heart problems. But she wasn't just enough sedation to still keep her awake. She could nod and shake her head yes and no to questions. One night, the patient in the room next to her died, but the body was still in the room, about to be taken to the morgue. The female patient's door was closed, the curtains were drawn. When the nurse went to check in on her, she had a look of sheer panic on her face. She was trembling. The nurse asked a series of questions to see if she was in pain, hot or cold. She denied everything. The nurse then asked if she saw something. The patient started to nod her head yes aggressively. The patient was not on any medication to make her hallucinate. After asking dozens of yes-no questions, this is the answer the nurse got. An obese, bald, pale white man was standing behind the nurse. The same man that had died next door.
Come with me to a haunted hospital in North Carolina. The Trivette Clinic was opened in 1932 by Dr. William Amos Trivette. He passed away in 1938 and the clinic closed soon after. It then became a supper club, a detox clinic, a nursing home, and eventually a private residence. That's why it looks more like a home than a hospital these days. In the basement, there are reports of child spirits named Majesty and Jimmy. There are even toys you can use to play with them. Allegedly, the Trivette Clinic could be home for over 70 ghosts. A spirit named Philip has been reported in the former surgery room. An old woman from the nursing home named Vicky is said to haunt this room. There are a few more spirits to meet, like David, a grumpy male spirit that doesn't like to be bothered. The toy piano on the bed has been played when no one was in the room. People have been scratched and cussed out in the red room by unseen entities, but I've always had pleasant experiences. The wardrobe in this room is believed to be haunted by a little girl named Emily. The doors have opened and closed by themselves. The Trivette Clinic is located in Hamptonville, North Carolina, and is available for private tours and investigations.
Let me tell you about this haunted hospital I worked at, where I had to push this body down to the morgue, and these spirits was jumping all on top of the body bag and pushing the body cart all up and down the hallway. So this is my first hospital job. I'm super new. I had never done anything in a hospital before. I was only doing like nursing homes and home health care, right? So I turn around and I'm training with this woman. You can tell she hated her life. She being rude. She didn't want to train me. She had me doing everything by myself, even though she was supposed to be training me. And so then, unfortunately, this patient passes away. And she tells me, like, you know, you got to toe tag them. You got to do X, Y, and Z. So she's telling me what to do, but she's like not really wanting to help me. She'll just keep leaving out the room. So I'm doing everything by myself. And I finally toe tag her, and it's time for us to like go ahead and put her in the bag. So she comes in, she helps me put her in the bag, and then she looked at me and she's like, you got to take her down to the morgue by yourself. I said, aren't you supposed to come with me? Like, I don't even know where the morgue is. She was like, no, I had to do it myself the first time. Okay. So I went ahead and I was like, cool, I'll just go by myself then. So fast forward, I pulled the body onto the elevator, and I'm already freaked out. I'm in the elevator with a dead body, and the first thing that's on my mind is, what if this elevator stopped and I get trapped in this elevator with a dead body? Anyway, so fast forward, I'm in the basement and I'm pretty much waiting for security. She told me that security was going to meet me there. Now, mind you, I don't know where I'm going. So I'm going up and down the hall, pushing this body up and down the hall, trying to find this morgue. And so it's a fairly large hospital, right? And when you don't know where you're going, you be confused. So I finally like saw this area, and I'm just like, okay, that looked like it would be something like a morgue. I don't know. So I walked up to the door, and in small printing, it said morgue, right? So I'm like, okay, this is it. I pushed the body up against the wall. And when I pushed the body up against the wall, I'm just standing there. I'm waiting for security. I hear the elevator ding, and I heard the doors open, and I was like, okay, finally, they're here. Nobody got off the elevator. So then I heard walking from the opposite direction, and I was like, oh, okay. So I'm just waiting. Nobody ever comes. I'm down there waiting, like I had pushed the body up against the wall and everything, waiting for about 15-20 minutes. So finally I was like, okay, let me call up there. So I called the unit, and when I called the unit, the girl who was training me answered the phone, and she's just like, oh, sometimes it just takes them a while. It's okay, you can go ahead and just wait there. And so I'm just like, okay. So then I wait down there longer, and the longer I wait, I just feel anxious. And I'm like, I do not like being down here. Like, I'm literally in the basement. It feels like by myself. I don't see any other workers. This shit is weird. So I hear talking, and I'm like, okay, let me walk to where they are, like whoever was talking, so I can tell them like, hey, do you mind getting security for me so they can hurry up and get down here? Because I don't want to leave the body, right? So I get to that area where I heard the talking, and there's nobody there. So immediately I know what that is. And I immediately don't want to be down there. I already didn't want to come. So I get annoyed because I've been waiting for a long time now. And so finally, I'm like, I'm just going on a search spree to try to find somebody myself. So I finally like walk down this other hallway. And as I'm walking down the other hallway, I hear commotion coming from where I left the body. And so I turned around. I'm like, maybe the security people came from the opposite direction. Maybe that's them. So when I go back around the corner, I notice that from afar, I can see there's something on the floor. And as I'm walking closer, I can see that it's the belongings bag that belongs to the deceased. I had it on top of the body bag. And so I'm like, okay, it could have just fallen. I don't know. And so as I'm getting closer, I see that there's somebody behind the cart, like holding onto the handles behind the cart. And I was like, you know, getting scared. So finally, I was just like, okay. So as I get closer, the person that was squatting behind the cart stood up, and it's a spirit pushing the body cart towards me. And then it's a couple more spirits sitting on top of the body bag. Y'all, I never ran to an elevator so fast. I ran to the elevator. And I called the unit again, and I told the girl, I said, hey, I'm gonna need you to come down to the thing with me. The security didn't even show. She said, just come on back up here. So I went back upstairs, and when I got back up there, she had an attitude. We called security again. Security gets down there, but this time they tell me that I had the body pushed all the way over by janitorial. Y'all know I did not. No, I did not. I did not have that body pushed down there by janitorial. So security's like, yeah, I just don't send no more new people down here if they just gonna be leaving bodies just anywhere. Anybody could walk down here. Well, maybe y'all should have been where y'all said y'all was gonna be.
Kemp Park Hospital in Johannesburg, South Africa is an abandoned hospital. It closed down in 1996, and many people say they don't understand what happened. It just looks like everybody got up and left. Some people claim that the hospital closed down because there was insufficient funds. If you walk through the hospital, you would find that there are tables covered with blood and glass jars of kidneys on the floor. So what is the story behind this place? Well, there are actually two stories. The first one is that people believe there are some paranormal activities there. If you speak to the people who have visited the hospital, they would say that they have seen a dark figure walking through the halls, doors opening and closing. Some people who visited there have claimed that when they walked through the place, they felt a presence hanging onto them. Some had taken the presence home, whilst others say the presence left them as soon as they exited the hospital. And what do the residents who live there say? One neighbor claims that their curtains open frequently and their doors slam shut. Another neighbor has said that they have seen wet footprints going through their home, and the footprints looked like it belonged to a child. A third neighbor says that they have seen children ghosts playing with their kids' toys. Because of all these stories of the hospital being haunted going around, of course a lot of people want to investigate to see if there's any truth behind it. When one such team went into the hospital, they had contact with one of the entities and recorded that this entity claimed to be a demon. Now, I don't know about you, but that is some freaky stuff. If paranormal activity is not your thing and you don't believe this for 1 second, well, there is also another horrific story behind Kemp Park Hospital. And that has absolutely nothing to do with the paranormal activity. Please follow me for the next story.
Creepiest things that have happened to me as a nurse, part 14. This story did not happen to me personally, but I found it on a Reddit forum and I, oh my gosh, have to share this picture with you so you can be just as creeped out as I am. Disclaimer, I don't suggest that you watch this video at night by yourself or while you're working night shift, but according to the algorithm, you're probably going to be at all three when this video comes to you. In an ICU in Kentucky, there was this patient that was experiencing all sorts of hallucinations. They have a video camera in the ICU, which is pretty common now, and they captured this on camera. Does that not look like some sort of demon on top of the patient? The patient died just 3 hours after the nurse took this picture. What is that?
One of you guys tagged me in this video, so I want to show everyone. Let's all become closer. Let's be in this together. This video is in Spanish, so I want to kind of explain what's happening throughout. This is at a children's hospital. Where are you going? No, stay. So it's late at night, and these nurses are encountering something really weird. So they're doing checkups on all their patients when one of the nurses comes into the room where the girl nurse is, but he was acting really strange. So she starts recording and walking towards him because she's like, what are you looking at? What's going on? That's when they both see a balloon that is coming down the hall. And the man explains how this balloon had followed him and at one point even like stuck onto his arm. And I like the girl nurse because she's more of like, let's figure it out. Let's not say it's paranormal. And she was like, what if it's just like static, you know, that's sticking to you? But that is when the balloon is coming closer and closer to him. And let me let you watch this.
No, salir aquí se me acuerdo, hace un pozo cuando salí tenía otra. Cuando vine para acá, se me empezó a pegar, boludo. Me pegué un cagazo y ahora lo veo.
Pero es la estática, boludo. Está lejos.
Está viniendo para acá.
Ay, la concha de la lora.
It's like still coming towards
Me
them.
dijo que le tocaron la pierna, que le apretaron la pierna. Ay, mierda, se viene para acá. Pero se viene para acá, pelotuda. No. ¿Está prendido el aire algo? ¿Qué sé yo? Sí, creo que sí. Tómatelo. Vamos para adentro. Me fui la mierda, la concha. Ahí está. Pase largo, boludo. ¿Sí?
Now, I don't know if you guys were reading the captions, but at one point, the guy even asked the girl, did they turn the AC on? Like maybe it's the air. And at this point, obviously, the girl nurse is getting a little bit freaked out, and she remembers how the girl on bed 5 told her that something touched her leg. Also, the way the balloon just like cuts the corner into that room, I would have been freaking out too. I'm sure a lot of creepy shit happens at hospitals, but like imagine being scared and then you're in charge of like the kids there overnight. I could never. What do you guys think?
At one point, this hospital had over 10 times the amount of patients it was supposed to have. This is the Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum. It was built in 1858 in West Virginia, and at the time, it was supposed to be a revolutionary hospital. And when the hospital first opened, it was meant to house only 250 patients. However, by the 1930s, the hospital quickly started to decline with overcrowding. Nurses and doctors were also losing control over the patients. In October of 1835, 4 patients managed to break loose and set the 4th floor on fire. Some patients were even known to become extremely violent and unalive other patients. And one time there was a nurse that went missing and no one had any idea where she was. It wasn't until 2 months later that she was discovered in an unused stairwell at the bottom. By the 1950s, the hospital was said to have had over 2,400 patients, and that's when the media first found out about what was happening inside the hospital. They basically compared the hospital to living in a pigsty with a very foul odor. Some patients were sleeping on the floor, and some patients were even kept in cages. Other reports claimed that there was feces smeared all over the walls. And it wasn't until 1994 that the hospital was finally shut down. But ever since then, people have claimed that the hospital is extremely haunted. There have been reports of ghostly apparitions and dark shadows roaming the hallways at night. Others also claim to hear footsteps and voices. And one of the more famous ghosts is that of a 9-year-old girl named Lily. This was her bedroom on the 4th floor, and she unfortunately passed away because of pneumonia when she was just 9. There have been dozens and dozens of sightings of Lily's spirit in this particular room. And to this day, her room still has some of her toys left over, as you can see on the windowsills, which leads people to believe that she's still waiting around, playing around with her toys, and hoping that someone comes around to play with her as well. Even paranormal investigators seem to think that's also the case, because they swear some of her toys move on their own, and one of her music box suddenly starts playing music on its own. And today, you can even go on tour throughout the hospital. During the day, there's a historic tour, and during the night, it's more of a haunting tour.
Some of the most interesting paranormal stories, in my opinion, are those from nurses and police officers. I've seen so many nurses share stories where they encounter something that they cannot explain while working in hospitals. And it's to the point where, like, if they experience something and tell their coworker is like, oh yeah, that's so-and-so spirit, just ignore her. I recently found a thread with a lot of nurses sharing their experiences, and I want to share some of these stories with you. A huge topic of conversation with nurses recently is how their dying residents will regularly see somebody or something standing in the corner or near their bed. And I was watching multiple nurses chime in on this thread saying that they will watch their patient's eyes follow something in the room, like they are genuinely seeing something in there with them. And most of these nurses believe that they are either their loved ones coming to collect the patient or something else. One woman shared that her grandmother was very sick and was on the verge of passing away, and an ambulance had to come to her, and they wanted her to step into the ambulance, and she refused because she said death was waiting for her in the ambulance. Nobody believed her, and she was finally brought into the ambulance, and upon the ambulance leaving the house, she passed away. Another woman named Megan said that her first week of working at a care facility, this woman kept complaining that she saw a man in black with a black hat on standing right outside her room, and she was asking, is he a doctor? Is he a patient? Why is he just standing there? Unfortunately, that woman did end up passing shortly after, and the night before she did, she said the man in all black was standing at the foot of her bed waiting for her. Another woman named Tessa said she had an entire hallway of residents all telling her in their own way and at separate times about a black cat that would wake them up in the middle of the night. She worked a night shift, and at 4 a.m., she heard a cat yowling, and she checked the entire floor and outside, and there was no cat. There were also no open windows, so she believes this was the spirit of a cat trying to comfort the sick residents. I have heard another story about a hospice that had a cat that would be there to comfort patients, and it would always go and lay on the bed of a resident who was about to pass away. This cat accurately predicted over 100 deaths. Allegedly, anyway. Another woman had a resident pass away, and the alarm in her room kept going off until her colleague had the idea to leave a cup of tea in there since the resident who had just died really liked tea. The alarm immediately stopped, and it started up again the next night when the cup of tea was removed. A nurse named Lisa had a patient point to the end of the bed and said, "I'm not going with them." Lisa told the patient, "You tell them that," and then she left the room to go call the patient's family. family, and the patient passed away the next afternoon. In my opinion, this is yet another case of a patient having someone or something coming to collect them at the end of their lives. A nurse named Valerie had a patient who was a Native American man and saw a black shadow enter his room. The patient rang his call bell at 3 a.m. and said that he had a man in his room who was whispering in his ear. Valerie knew that he wasn't lying because she knew what she saw, so she stayed in the room with him the entire night to make sure that he didn't pass away. Another nurse who worked at an elderly care facility said that she had multiple patients complaining about children running in the hallways late at night. It would often be residents who didn't even speak to each other. Finally, one male nurse named Lou had a patient press their call button late at night. The patient said, "Please tell that woman to go to her bed, she's just standing there," and Lou looked around and said, "What woman?" The patient said, "You just passed by her, the woman in the pink nightgown standing there." Lou went to go tell his colleagues because obviously he was freaked out, and his colleagues told him that a woman wearing a pink nightgown had passed in that room 2 days ago. There are so many stories just like this, and I absolutely love them, so if you are a nurse or a police officer and you have ever experienced anything like this, please let me know. I want to hear about it.
Story still freaks me out to this day. Every time I tell it, it gives me goosebumps. I cannot believe that this happened to me and my colleague. I was working a few years ago at a NICU as a night shift nurse here in Dallas. And of course, around 3 a.m., I'm kind of doing my touch time. But where I was standing, I could see all the way down the hallway. And I see my friend around the corner. And she is walking to me like fast. And she looks ghostly white. Her eyes were wide. And she said, "Kendall, you need to drop what you're doing and you need to follow me now. You have to come and see this." And in between each bed spot, there was a computer in between. And she had lullaby music playing on it. And she was in one room with one of the babies, and she was about to draw a lab on it. And all of a sudden, the computer screen shuts off, and she notices that the music stopped playing. And so she kind of glances up, and she's like, "Oh, that's weird." And out of the corner of her eye, in the opposite room, through the sliding glass doors, she sees on that computer something red. So she fully looks at it, and it is a red devil face, fully taking up the entirety of the screen, staring at her. And so she immediately drops what she's doing, and that's when she grabbed me. So I'm rounding the corner, fully expecting it not to be there still. But I round the corner, and from the hallway, I look into the room, and I also see it. So there's both of us are looking at this. My mouth drops wide open. I get teary-eyed. I'm basically crying because I'm so scared. And I was too afraid to go in that room. So we go into the other room that she was in originally, and I'm standing on the opposite side of the sliding glass door into that room, just staring at this face, this devil face on the screen. And I didn't know what to do, but I'm religious, so I immediately start praying out loud. I said, "Lord, please protect us. Please protect this baby. Whatever this is, it is not welcome here." And I just repeated that because I didn't know what else to do. It literally makes my eyes water because it scares the crap out of me. I couldn't make this up. Somehow I mustered up the courage to say, "You know what, this isn't okay. I'm going to turn it off." I take a step towards the door, and the screen shuts off. It goes black for a split second, and then all of a sudden, it goes back to playing YouTube. Playing like the lullaby music that was on YouTube. And I go in there and I scour it because I am a little bit of a skeptic, and I looked at the search history, I looked at everything that it could have possibly been, like any browsers that were open, anything. So just confused as to what that could have been. And I mean, in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, something evil is there. I was so afraid to go back to work.
You can feel her fear, you can feel her honesty, you can feel the energy of the experience as she's speaking. So what I'm feeling is two things happening. I'm feeling a person deliberately doing this, intending it for somebody else. Wires got crossed, ended up at the wrong place. They did not embed it in a YouTube video. This was an attack. Also feeling around the hospital, and I'm also feeling like it lives maybe around a few buildings on that corner, on that block. Looks like a bolt of energy, that isn't necessarily a human form, but it's this energy force. I don't know where it comes from. I would want to see photos of this hospital to get a little bit more specific. But it tends to mess with the electrical appliances. It tends to, every now and then it will scare people a little bit. It'll do little things. And those two worlds collided.
Hey everybody, creepy story time, Haunted Hospital edition. Not sure where to really fit this one, if it's a ghost story, glitch in the Matrix, but Gerald Pal, the Jaywalker here, and I really wish that I could take credit for this story, but it's my wife's. All credit goes to her. She just gave me the go-ahead to share it. So, she and one of her co-workers had been paged to go transport a patient from the emergency department to one of the parts of their unit. Their unit consisted of three different parts. on three different floors. So she had gone from where she was at on the 7th floor down to the ED, which is on the 1st floor, to take a patient up to another part of their unit that was up on the 3rd floor. So they grab the patient from the ED, take the patient up to the 3rd floor, and as they're going from the 3rd floor back up to the 4th floor, so they get on the elevator, it stops on the 4th floor. So going from the 3rd floor to the 7th floor, stops on the 4th floor. Which it shouldn't do, because the 4th floor is empty. It has been empty for months. There's no unit that is currently on the 4th floor. There had been, but it was not being used. Now, the hospital that my wife works at is 100 years old or better, and the area that she works in happens to be one of the older parts of the hospital. So again, elevator stopped on the 4th floor, and the elevator doors only open about 1.5 feet or 2 feet wide. Big enough that they can get out, but not so big that it's fully open. I'm trying to get the doors to close, hitting the buttons, trying to go up. It won't move. Doors are stuck open. They're only halfway open at that. So they decide to get off, trying the outside buttons. Nothing is working. As they're trying to get the elevator doors to close or move at all, the phone behind them on the nurse's station on this closed unit starts to ring. And so my wife's coworker grabs it thinking, oh, it's going to be freaking security asking what the heck we're doing on this closed unit. And he picks it up and it's complete silence. So creeping, they get a little creeped out by that, but, don't think too much of it. My wife said that as they got off the elevator, the feeling in the air just got heavy and felt really weird, kind of creepy. And then it almost felt like as if time was slow. Time slowed down, so it felt like a really long time, though it may have only been just a few minutes that they were on the floor. But they had gone off the elevator and decided to make a beeline through this closed unit to where the next bank of elevators are, and go up this other bank of elevators to the 7th floor where they could get to their unit. So as they start heading through this unit, they start to notice things are just out of place. As I mentioned, this unit's been closed for months. There's been no one on, but there are blankets, pillows, papers strewn about just all over the place. There's TV monitors that are on, there's TVs that are on, monitors that are on. Things just are out of place. And it's weird, and it's freaking them out, and so they're, even more wanting to get off the floor and get up to their unit. So they get to the other side of the unit, to where the elevators are, to where they can get up. They get to the elevators. They're trying the hardest to get the elevator going. It's not even lighting up. It's on the call button. They hit it. It's not lighting up. They don't hear the sound of the elevator. Nothing. And so as they're hanging out, they're standing there. They're really starting to get creeped out and just really, really kind of scared. And all of a sudden, again, the elevators that they're trying to get on are across from a nurse's station, and this nurse's station has old, metal desks. And as they're standing there, they're turned towards they're facing the elevators, as they're trying to get, in vain to get the doors to open or get the elevator to call. They hear what sounds like a book being dropped or thrown almost onto the desk behind them. Really loud, really heavy, really big book, just slamming down. And they're jumping, they're freaking out. And, my wife said her coworker was almost in tears, and it was just crazy. And as soon as this what sounds like this book slamming down on the table behind them, the next time they hit the button, it calls, the light goes on the button, elevator comes down. get up to their floor. They call security. Hey, this happened. We were we were trying to get up. Elevator stopped in the 4th floor, and it's a mess there. What the heck is going on there? The security team was stymied because, number one, it's supposed to be empty, and the guy who was working security that night, he and one of the other guys had gone up there and had walked through the unit, and it was pristine. It was clean. There was nothing on the floor, no papers, no blankets, no pillows hanging out, and everything was off. And he said, let me look into things. I'll give you a call back. Calls my wife back an hour later. And he said, we've checked everything. We've looked at the tapes, security footage. We see nothing. What time were you up there? She's like, well, it was like between 3 o'clock and this time, it was 3:10 to 3:15 or something in the morning. He's like, yeah, we watched everything from about 2:45 to 3:30. We didn't see you guys at all. We should have seen you guys on there, but there was nothing. And he's like, that was just really weird. So, so that's the story, What was this? Was it just glitchy in the Matrix because they couldn't see him? Was there a unit and something? My wife said there just felt like a presence there. 2, was it ghost? Was it a combination of both? Let me know what you think, leave me a comment. Tell me what you think it was. We'll talk to you soon. See you on another Jaywalk, guys.
So when my mom told me this story, it gave me goosebumps. So my mom is a hospice nurse, and one night a few years ago she was on call, and she gets a call from one of the hospitals in town that says, hey, we got a patient, they just got the bad news from the doctor, and they want to be on hospice. My mom did her job. Okay, let them know I'll be there shortly. Probably take me about 10 minutes. So at the hospital was this woman, we'll call her Jane. She had just gotten told by the doctor, the bad news that she had terminal cancer and she didn't have a whole lot longer to live. So while her family was there, they elected to go on hospice for the remaining time that she had left. So after they had made the decision as a family, her kids, everybody, they left. So Jane was kind of sitting there taking it all in while she was waiting for the hospice nurse. In this moment, a woman walks in her room, and Jane's kind of looking up like, who the hell are you? And this woman introduces herself and says, hi, my name's Betty. I'm your neighbor. I've been your neighbor for the last couple days here in the hospital. I'm just in the room down the hall. And I heard the bad news. So I just wanted to come in and say, is there anything I can do for you to let you know that it's going to be okay? And Jane was like, what do you mean you heard how did you hear the bad news? And she was kind of taken aback by this. And she's talking to me and she goes, no, I'm okay. I think I just need some time. The hospice nurse is coming. I'm going to just take some time to myself. So this woman comes to her and goes, okay, okay, sweetie, we're in the Midwest. Okay, sweetie, if you need anything, let me know. And so instead of turning around and leaving the room, Betty turns and walks into the bathroom of Jane's room and shuts the door. And Jane was just kind of shocked, like, what is happening here? And literally, probably 60 seconds after that happened, my mom got there. She came and she knocked on the door. Hi, I'm the hospice nurse. Do you have a minute to talk? And Jane was kind of like, yeah, I guess. So my mom, she's been a nurse for a really long time. And so she sees like this hesitation on Jane's face and she can hear it in her voice. And she's like, is there something on your mind? Do you want to say something? And Jane was kind of like, so my neighbor, Betty, just came in and, was really sweet, really a nice lady, but she just went into the bathroom and she's still in there. My mom was like, oh, okay. How long has she been in there? And Jane was like a minute or so, but I can't, I don't hear anything. I don't hear, what's going on. So my mom is trying to be very polite. Obviously, this is a situation where Betty doesn't need to be there. And, my mom's been in healthcare for a long time. She thought maybe Betty might have a little dementia or something. So she walks over to the bathroom door and she knocks and there's no answer. And she knocks again and she says, hey, I'm so-and-so, I'm with hospice. I'm going to open the door. So then she goes to open the door and there's nobody in there. So then, my mom says to Jane, gosh, there's nobody in here. And Jane's like, kind of wigged out. Obviously, she's like, I had a conversation with her. Like, I'm not sleeping. I'm not groggy. She was in there. And so, my mom was like, okay, well, let's, he just had a traumatic, thing happen. It's a lot going on. Let's kind of get going. We'll talk through this and, maybe I'll go check on Betty and maybe she slipped out at some point when you didn't see her. So they finished the paperwork because, of course, it's healthcare. There's paperwork for everything. So they finished the paperwork. My mom says, they finished chatting, and my mom says, okay, well, I'll go check on Betty, and we'll be with them. And Jane's like, okay, thank you for coming. So my mom leaves and walks over to the room that Betty said she was from, and she looks in, and there's nobody in there. So then she walks down to the nurse's station to report off, I guess, what she had done and kind of keep in communication with the nurses. And as she's reporting to the nurses, she tells them, hey, Jane said Betty kind of came in her room right before I got there, and I can't find her in her room now, so I just want to make sure that, if she has dementia or something, she's not lost somewhere, so if somebody could just make sure she's okay. And I'll never forget my mom's face when she told me this part. She said the nurse looks at her and goes, "What?" So my mom goes, "Betty, I just want to make sure she's okay. She was in," and recants the story, and the nurse looks at her and goes, "Betty died this morning, like 12 hours ago. Betty's not there. Betty was not in her room." And of course, my mom was shooketh by this. My mom is not a storyteller. She's not she's a spiritual person, but, she's not a big into the paranormal. So this really took her back. She was pretty freaked out by this. But yeah, when she told me the story, like I said, I know her. She doesn't make up stories. She doesn't make this stuff up. So when she was telling me this, like, I got goosebumps. I'm like, that is creepy.
Wow, I just had a really interesting experience. So I have to cover my shirt because it's my company name and people don't need to know where I work. But I was just visiting one of my transitioning patients. She's actually like actively dying. And we were just like, I was just, around the bed with, her daughters, and we're talking, we're having a conversation, just talking about a bunch of random things. And, we come out of the room, we're in the kitchen talking. Well, no, excuse me, in the room, I got a phone call. My phone was on vibrate. I forgot that I turned it on vibrate, so I felt my pocket vibrating. It's like, oh, I got a call. I'm thinking that it's the number, it was a Blue Island number. If you're in Illinois, you know that. I thought the area code, like the number calling, was a different, like, patient's family member. And I'm thinking, oh gosh, I have a patient in that area who's also actively dying. Maybe, this is the phone call. And I saw that I had a voicemail left, right? So when we're in the kitchen, I'm talking to the patient's daughters, and I'm telling them, because this patient specifically, today is Tuesday, she hasn't opened her eyes or talked or did anything. Like, she's kind of been like in a comatose state since, I want to say it was Saturday. When I came to my visit yesterday, as soon as she heard my voice, she opened her eyes, she tried to look at me, she started moving, and I was like, oh my gosh, like, was she waiting to see me, hear me? And, I was the only person that was able to arouse her, over the past 2 days. Obviously when I came today, she wasn't, waking up, she wasn't moving, opening her eyes, none of that. But I was, talking to them about I try as a nurse, especially in this line of work, to keep kind of a little bit of a barrier, and not like in an informal cold way, but just like I have to protect my mental health and my own well-being as well, because this job, when you work in hospice, you see people die all day every day, and so it can be emotionally taxing and draining. And so I do my best to try to keep a little bit of a barrier, but there are some patients and families who just poke through that barrier and knock it down, and you get really close, and you get attached. And so I'm telling them about a patient that I had lost back in I want to say it was back in March, if I remember correctly, or either April, one of the two. And I was very close to that patient. She was with me for about 9 or 10 months. I got really close with her daughter, love her daughter down. We are still like this. And I was telling them about her, and I was like, I think your mom might be a close, second to that. Like, not like she's second place to that patient, but just like she might be another one who I just will remember her, and it'll be difficult for me to forget her because of how impactful just she is. And so I leave the visit, I get in my car, and I check my phone because I had a missed call. So I'm thinking, and I'm like, oh, I have a voicemail. Let me listen to the voicemail. Well, it was only a 6-second silent voicemail. There was no talking. There was no nothing, just a silent voicemail. And so I call the number back, and I didn't hear the name of the facility. I thought it was a different facility that I have another patient at. So I'm, talking to the receptionist, and she's like, oh, no, we don't have a patient here by that name. And I'm like, wait, what facility did you say this was again? And she says the name. And I was like, oh, well, yeah, I had a patient here who died back in March or April. I forget now which month it was. But I'm like, yeah, I had a patient there who passed. And the receptionist was like, okay, hold on. She puts me on hold for a few seconds. And then she comes back and she's like, yeah, nobody called regarding that person. I'm not sure why you got a call, but yeah, no one called. And I was like, what the heck? I was literally just talking about that patient or thinking about her. And for me to have a missed call with a silent voicemail from that facility that patient was at and nobody called me, I had to call that family back that I was just with. And I told one of her daughters, like, you will never believe what the heck just happened. Like, we were just talking about how impactful this patient was to me. Obviously, I didn't share like specifics of like names or anything like that, but just like explaining to them like how impactful this patient was for me and how difficult her passing was, because it was like, in hospice, things aren't necessarily unexpected, but her passing was unexpected because nobody saw it coming. Like, she wasn't showing signs that she was going to pass before she passed. And so I was just like, I just like shook it up because like, what the heck? Like, things happen to me, but this might by far be one that is just like, it takes the cake of like strange things that have happened. Like, I've never had that happen, and I'm shook. So I don't know, but like in a good way, because I'm smiling. So like, I feel good. Like, my girl's with me, you know, she be looking out, and she just wanted to say hi, I guess. I don't know, maybe her and my patient who's passing, you know, maybe she came to just say hello, you know, and yeah, and say hello to me. So yeah, it's things like this as a hospice nurse that just make you be like, okay, like, I know as a nurse, I've made an impact in people's lives, and they're grateful and appreciative, and, you know, people have made an impact in my life just as much. And yeah, it's crazy. I just wanted to share that. That's it. That's all. Gotta go back to work.
I just left a patient's house who was having visioning and the death stare happen right before my eyes. So if you guys aren't familiar, visioning is something that happens with I wouldn't say almost all, but many, many patients on hospice where they see dead relatives. And the death stare is when they stare at something on the wall and they're seeing something that we don't see. So I just witnessed it with my own eyes. It's my first day back to work after the new year, and I just witnessed this, and it's like the most magical thing ever. We don't know what it is, and like, I don't claim to know what it is, but it's crazy when you see it. So this patient, late 90s, has been married to his wife for almost 70 years. They're both amazing, wonderful people. I wish I could like stay there for hours. But he's like pleasantly confused. And I could tell that he's kind of going in and out of consciousness while I'm there. And he'll be like present with you looking, and then suddenly not present, and his eyes will be like glazed over and fixed to the ceiling. And then a big smile comes on his face. I saw it happen like the whole time I was there, like intermittently every 20 minutes. And I wanted his wife to make sure she saw this. I wanted to point it out to her so I could say, this is what we call like the death stare. And it usually means someone's going to die within the next few weeks. I wanted to make sure she understood that, so she knew kind of a timeline. And I'm like, of course we don't know for sure, but this is generally what I see. And she took it so well and was like, oh no, honey, he's been doing that for like a couple weeks. And you know, the other day I asked him, what are you staring at? Because he stares very clearly and doesn't break the stare and doesn't even follow directions when he's doing that, and with a big smile on his face. And she said, I asked him what he was seeing, and I was like, you did? What did he say? And he said Jesus. And my message is not about like, so Jesus is the thing. My message, because I've heard this many times, and it doesn't always have to be Jesus, and sometimes it's not. But he happens to be Christian, so it's Jesus. And he's obviously and clearly comforted by that, and so is she. I mean, he's sitting there with a big grin on his face. And it's just so beautiful and like magical to like really witness that. And that's what I was witnessing this whole visit. And then on top of that, she had a sister just recently die, and they were all very close with this sister, including him. And she was telling me how she was kind of afraid to tell him that she had died because she's not sure how much he'd understand, and she knew he'd be really sad because they were really close. But the other day she decided to tell him because she felt bad keeping it from him. So she went into the room and said, you know, so-and-so, I have something to tell you. And he doesn't normally respond or talk, but he said, what is it? And so she was even surprised by that. She said, so-and-so just died, you know, last week. And she said he looked at her and said, oh, I know. And she couldn't believe, one, he was responding, and then two, he said that he knew. And she goes, you did? Who told you? And he said, she did. She came to me and told me. You guys? I don't know. I mean, I have witnessed this so many times. I don't know why today it hit me so hard. I think because I feel like I was like witnessing it in real time, and this couple was so sweet and so amazing. I don't know. It was just so great and so amazing. Good first day back. Love you guys.
Okay, I worked at a haunted hospital, okay, owned a postpartum unit as a CNA, and that hospital is haunted, okay, and ain't nobody gonna tell me different. The postpartum unit is definitely haunted, okay. I have so many stories, but this is one that happened. So I was working night shift. We would only have one CNA on usually, okay, so it's just me and the nurses. This hospital is super old hospital. It's the only hospital in the community other than the hospitals from a military base. But for everyday civilians, it's the only hospital. So it's pretty old. It's been renovated. Anyway, the postpartum unit, the nurse's station is here in the middle. One side is postpartum. One side is pediatrics. By that time, Oh, sorry, my chest started hurting. Anyway, so like I said, so the pediatric side and the postpartum side. At that time that this incident happened, we had no patients on the pediatric side, none at all. So we had cribs down there, we had all kinds of storage stuff down there, and we did have a supply closet down there. Other than that, that's all we had down there because it was completely empty. We had low census. We only had patients on postpartum. So, you know, the night's going good. I'm working with my besties. You know, we ordered our DoorDash. We're having us a good night. It's a good night, okay? All of a sudden, call bell starts ringing. And I'm like, okay, like, that's weird because I didn't take care of everybody else. Like, something must be going on. Like, why is the call bell going off? Like, what does this mama's need? So I go look at it because the call bell is in a nurse's station. And I answer the phone. I say, this is Maria. How can I help you? Nothing. I say, okay, that's weird. So I get out the nurse station and I go look and I see that there's a light ringing down the pediatric side. Mind you, there's no patients down there. So I'm like, why is that light ringing? There's nobody down there. I'm like, okay, whatever. So I just hang up the phone. I'm like, okay, because sometimes, like, you know, maybe it's a glitch. Okay, it's fine. Like, you know, it's an old hospital, whatever. I knew there was no patients down there. Like, for 100% I knew. So I was like, I'm not even going to walk down there. You know, I'm trying to eat my little food while it's hot, whatever. So then about like 5 minutes later, call bell goes off again. I answered. I say, hello, this is Maria. How can I help you? Nothing. I say, okay, all right. So I get out and I go look. And again, it is the same light down the pediatric side that's in this one particular room that's ringing. I'm like, okay, like what? Is somebody down there? Like, is a housekeeper down there? Is somebody down there that actually needs some help? So I walk down the hallway. Mind you, as soon as I start walking down the hallway, I start feeling nauseous, okay? And maybe it's in my head, maybe it's not, but I start feeling nauseous, I start feeling anxious. I'm walking down the hallway looking like this, you know, like make sure ain't nobody behind me. Because I'm the only person walking down this pediatric hallway by myself. I get to the room because I can see on the outside of the door that the light is flashing, and I look in. And when I look inside of the room, not only is there no patient there, there's nothing in the room. And by nothing, I mean there's no bed, there's no bedside table, there's no remote control for the TV, there's no call light. There's no call light, okay? How is the call light ringing not only on the outside, it's ringing on the outside of the door and at the nurse's station. There's no call light in there. By that, I mean, if you work in a hospital, you know those call lights attached to the wall. It's like a long, you know, cord attaches to the wall that has like a remote, whatever. That wasn't in the room. Now, this was pretty common that there wasn't stuff in the room because we had low census, so sometimes other units would borrow our stuff, or sometimes we would just not have anything in the room because we would be putting our big cribs, you know, in there, whatever. So I wasn't surprised that there wasn't nothing in the room. However, I was surprised, okay, that not only was the call light going off and there's nobody in the room, but there's no call bell. There's no call bell, okay? I about ran back to the nurse's station. You know how SpongeBob was like running when he's taking the trash out? Like, that was me. And that is one of many stories I have of when I worked at a haunted hospital, okay?
Extremely tired, but go ahead and grab your popcorn, grab your snacks or whatnot, because I have a bunch of extremely scary stories that I need to share with you guys. I don't know if you guys remember in the beginning when I first started like filming videos, I would talk all about all of my experience of working at a very haunted hospital. I used to work night shift, so I had a lot of crazy things going on. I just came in contact with some of my friends from that same hospital who still work there, and apparently things have only gotten worse in the hospital, and they had a bunch of things they wanted to share with me. Starting off really strong with number one of my friends, she's actually good friends with one of the cleaning ladies, and the cleaning ladies told her this story. This cleaning lady comes around and cleans the offices like on the 4th floor that are empty for the night. So in the morning or in the afternoon, people leave for the day and the offices are empty. Her job is to kind of go up there and kind of like clean everything up, vacuum, etc. She says that she always has crazy things happening, but this is the one that really stands out to her. She says one night as she's going around in her own little world cleaning everything up, she starts to hear growling coming from one of the offices. The growling is so clear that at first she's just like maybe somebody's working super late and they're like watching a movie or like a scary movie, because she just kept hearing the growling coming from that office. She continues on cleaning the other offices when finally the growling gets so out of control that she decides that she's gonna go knock on the door to see if they're okay, like maybe something's wrong with them. She says the minute she knocks on the door, there's like this deafening silence that just happens. Like everything just goes completely quiet. Like you can literally hear a pin drop. She's standing there completely terrified with chills going up and down her body, just like waiting
for something to happen when out of nowhere, like, the silence is broken by an even louder growl coming directly from behind the door, like literally right at her face, followed by scratches. This completely terrifies her so badly that she literally runs out of the building and goes home. Like, she doesn't even care. She just leaves. The next day, after she has kind of gotten herself together, she does decide to go back to work, and she mentions it to the nurses, and the nurses confirm. They tell her that they're so happy to feel validated because they have always felt things in that room that no one ever believes them, and the fact that she also heard it makes them feel like they're not crazy. This is just story number 1 out of many. Let me know if you guys want me to do more parts.
So as most of you guys know, I used to work in a trauma center, night shift. I would work from 7:30 p.m. to 7 a.m. In that time, being that it was a trauma center, we would see a lot of fatalities and a lot of just horrific things. With that comes a lot of paranormal activity. The story that I'm about to share will forever be engraved in my mind. So the era that I used to work at was split into 3 different sections. There was pod 1 and 2, pod 3, and pod 4. At night, pod 3 would always close down. So that section was always completely isolated. Being that I would work night shift, whenever it came time for lunch, I would want to get away from all the patients. So I would usually go sit in pod 3 and put on my little Netflix, put my headphones on, watch my movie, and eat my lunch. So when I go back there, it's completely dark. There's no one around me whatsoever. All of the rooms have been cleared. As I start to eat, I hear someone sneeze in one of the empty rooms. I kind of stood still for a little bit, trying to like rationalize what I just heard, but I decided to just ignore it and continue watching my show. Then as I look over to one of the empty rooms on this side, I see a man kind of poke his head out, look from side to side, and then just like start walking down the hallway. And I mean, this man is moving fast. Like, his legs are not even moving. He's just kind of gliding down the hallway. He continues on to the end of the hallway, and then I don't see him anymore. I get chills up and down my body, but again, I try to ignore it and just continue eating my food and watch my Netflix. After my lunch ends, I go over to one of my coworkers and I tell her what I saw, and she tells me that that's impossible because there's no one back there. Both of us go back to check because I'm like, I 100% know what I saw. So we go into the room that I saw this man poking his head out of. And when we open the curtains, we see that same man laying in bed. He had been deceased. He had passed away earlier that day. So what I saw obviously was not him. It was his spirit leaving his body. But his physical body was still laying in that bed, covered up. He was still even wearing like the same shirt that I saw him wearing. Like, everything was exactly the same. So yeah, a lot of times when you pass away, it does take your soul a little bit to kind of leave your body.
I heard before I started working night shift that our hospital was haunted and never believed it. Caught some weird vibes every now and then, but tonight is next level. It is what, 2:10, and every hour, 2 minutes after the hour, we're hearing a scream. It seems like it's on a timer, but we can't figure out where it's coming from, and we have no logical explanation. Someone please explain this. Watch till the end.
I'm still gonna like freak out.